I think we're live. We're live, everybody. I think we are. I'd love it if Zoom would actually tell me. It does actually tell me. Just popped up right now. So thank you, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the third episode of what has been one of the most fun series I've done this year, and in any time. It's been great to have these conversations because it is so topical in our lives right now. And that is how artificial intelligence is impacting the world of recruiting at different stages and different components of the work that we do. And today we're going to be talking about how artificial intelligence intersects with one of the big challenges that we have in recruitment: candidate experience. Can artificial intelligence have an impact, a positive impact, on how we treat candidates? And can we change some of those like really persistent problems that have plagued recruitment from year dot? Is AI the answer to that? That's the conversation we're going to have today. Anyway, before we get onto it, let's just make sure that everyone can hear me okay and that we're okay using Zoom. I think it's the most familiar webinar product that we all use, but I want to check whether that's fine. Firstly, audio visual. Can you hear me and see me okay, folks? Let me know in the chat whether that's okay. Yes, people are saying yes. Ed, how are you doing? Good to see you. By the way, one thing that I think we are familiar with Zoom is that it defaults, I think, to sort of panelists only or something. So make sure that when you post something in chat, it defaults to everyone because we just want one channel for communication. There are no back channels here, okay? What's going to be said is going to be said openly. We're going to be talking whatever we know, you're going to know. So make sure you default to that when you chat with us. Okay, everyone can hear us fine, I think, which is great. Use the Q&A feature, by the way. We're going to get to them towards the end of the show. Last 50 minutes is going to be dedicated to specific questions you have. So if there's something you definitely want answered, make sure you make use of the Q&A. Okay, let's get on with the show. My name is Hong Lee, of course. I'm going to be your co-host today. My co-pilot for this show and this series is Yasar Ahmad. Sal, why don't you introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do? Oh, Sal, you're on mute.
Sorry,
buddy.
that's basics, right? I love that I'm Hung Lee, of course. That slipped in there. Wow. So yeah, I'm Siadhal. Not, of course, you probably didn't know that. I'm one of the co-founders at Metaview, also the CEO. Really delighted to be involved in this series. Just a little bit about why we're doing this series, and some of you folks who have attended a couple of the others so far may already have heard this, but it's really clear that AI is revolutionizing, frankly, how a lot of people work every day already, and certainly going to continue to do that for, what we deem to be productive is going to change as a result of this technology. But there's still so much to be discussed, to be debated, and basically actually to be decided about how we use it and make sure it works for us as folks that care about building great teams. So that's why we wanted to bring this series together to really, as Hung says, sort of hone in on some of those key aspects of a great hiring process and how AI can affect that. Just a quick note on what Metaview is. So Metaview is a first of its kind AI that automatically generates world-class summarized notes after every interview. Our sort of what we know is that diligently taking notes during an interview is sort of admirable, but it's actually really bad for a great candidate experience if you're really focused on taking notes during an interview, which is one of the core interactions, one of the core touch points you have with candidates. And is basically now something that machines can do better than human beings. And so that means it's time for human beings to stop doing that and focus on things that they can do better. Yeah, I'd really recommend checking us out. Head over to metaview.ai. You can sign up for a free trial. I'd also recommend checking out our newsletter on this broad topic. We have a newsletter started called Recruiters AI Digest. I'll ping a link for that in the chat. It's a really good way to get sort of a succinct summary every week of what's going on in AI that actually impacts recruiting. So yeah, there'll be a link for that in the chat soon. Really excited for the chat.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And by the way, no one is keeping on top of AI, so that newsletter is going to be super, super relevant. Do sign up to it. Okay, we've got Kevin Grossman here as well. Kevin, please introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Grossman. I'm the president of Talent Board and the Candidate Experience Awards. We're a global benchmark research firm and help companies big and small across industries improve their recruiting and hiring through the lens of their candidate experience and survey research that we capture anonymously through their candidates.
Fantastic stuff. Great to see you, Kevin. And we have Yasar Ahmad as well. Yasar, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yasar Ahmad. I'm the Global Vice President of Talent, Mobility and Rewards at HelloFresh. Excited to be here, talk about this topic, very close to my heart and very close to our work at HelloFresh.
Fantastic stuff, Kevin. Yasar, sorry. Let's kick off with the first question here. It's essentially, what do you think makes great candidate experience? A very wide question, but we've all been candidates. We've been through a recruiting process. If you cast your mind back to the last time you went and interviewed for a job, by the way, this is to everyone here as well. What was it in particular that made you think, wow, that was a great experience? Folks, let me know, drop me a comment in the chat there. What is the thing that made you think that was great candidate experience? Okay, let's go to you on this, Yasar. Your thoughts on that question. Forget about you being a recruiter for a second. Think about last time you walked in as a candidate. What was particularly good about that experience? Can you kind of crystallize?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of have an answer ready, but I will give you your answer as well. So it's like a human-centric approach, essentially something that's very ergonomic for the candidate, what makes sense for the candidate. So based on the context of the time, right? So if you're a candidate during COVID, it would have been a very different experience. Thus, compared to now, your experience would be very different in terms of what is the best candidate experience, right? So I think for me, the best candidate experience is something that it involves clear communication, consistent process, clear instructions, transparent process, something that is respectful, and also maybe insightful, like challenging. I actually have we did a study in HelloFresh where we checked all the candidate experience for our engineering folks, and the harder the interview process was, or the harder the tests were, the better the candidate experience was. People feeling challenged during the interview process is a key part to feeling like, oh wow, I'm actually joining a company where I can learn something new. So that's an interesting one. I think the challenging part needs to be part of the candidate experience.
Yeah, really, really good. And that's a counterintuitive observation, but you can make it too easy, right? And that is true for almost anything that has some sort of reward. You need to feel as if there's an achievement to get there. So absolutely right. And Ed, absolutely. Thank you so much for your contributions there. Being prompt, high touch, transparent, all of those things, very, very much the case. Kevin, this actually might be a tough question for you to answer because you are so deep in a professional way thinking about candidate experience. Have you forgotten what it was like as a candidate? When's the last time you went and did that? And can you recall back in those days, like when did you what distinguished great candidate experience from your own personal perspective?
I think that they're so visceral, those moments, that positive and negative for that matter. And unfortunately, the negative tends to be even more powerful in our memories. And I know that, so I don't think anybody forgets. In fact, anytime I'm in a room with folks, and if I'm doing a workshop, presenting or whatever, and I ask everybody, tell me about the most negative candidate experience, we all remember very much. So even if it was 20 years ago, that's the case. We also remember the positive experiences too. So I do remember what it was like. I can tell you the most positive experience of all is getting the job. That's all that's all we want as a job candidate, is to get the job, right? But most won't for any given job. And so what is that second best thing that we can deliver at the end of the day? And that is a positive and fair experience, which is subjective, especially the fairness part. But when candidates feel it was positive and fair, and Yasar already touched on some of this and in the comments too, with Ed and others, about consistent communication, timely consistent communication, and just that follow through, what's going to happen next, especially if I'm getting screened and interviewed, right? Because the reality, you were just talking about it being too easy. We don't want it to be too easy, and yet we're making the application process super easy, right, for individuals. And sometimes it's like less than 5 minutes, click, and my basic information is there for the job. But the hard part really is consistent and timely follow through and communication from screening to final interview. And if I get the offer, of course, that's ultimately, that's the happiest candidate of all time. But that is the hard part for organizations, is that consistent and timely communication that we have found in our research over the years. But again, I think we all could sit here right now and share the positive and negative stories.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, but I think it's very interesting how you position that. The consistency of communication, that seems to be one of the big challenges that organizations have. We'll talk about what those challenges are in a second, but let's go to Sal first. Sal, I don't know whether you can recall last time you actually got a job, but yeah, I mean, can you remember what that was like, and what was a good experience?
Yeah, and actually the last I don't want to name names. The last job I had, great company. I wouldn't actually say it was an amazing candidate experience going through the process, but I think the thing that they did well, that the thing underlying everything, I would plus one everything that Kevin and Yasser have said so far for sure. But I think there's also almost like this subjective thing that you want to appeal to, which is if you're trying to hire really top candidates, you want to make them feel like they're joining a special group of people, a special company at a special time. And I think you can actually potentially mess a lot of the things up. You wouldn't want to mess up the things that we just mentioned, but if you can make people think this is a special company at a special time, potentially you can mess some of those things up because it's just so appealing. And yeah, I was in the previous company I was at, it felt like that's what I was joining. And actually it wasn't because the candidate experience was so great that I was excited to join it. It's just, I truly came away from the interactions, even if they were really hasty, even if sometimes they're a little bit slapdash, I was like, well, this is just a company that's really going places. I want to join it. So yes. I think it's really hard to design for that, but I also think, and it's really hard to pretend if you're not a special place at a special time, as it were. But I think at the end of the day, that's really what you want to get across to the most in-demand candidates is this is a special place.
That's a really interesting observation. So it may not be the technical execution for the moments. They might not be that polished because of the degree of stress level. Let's say you're hyper-growing or whatever it might be. Or there's not an interview room. Everyone's having to do things in corridors. That type of thing.
Which is obviously not a great experience for everyone, right? Just to be clear, I think the things that were mentioned here around sort of transparency, clarity of communication, quality of relationship, and interaction with the people you meet, they're all still incredibly important. But I do think there's this sort of like knockout blow that sort of underlies all of it, which is which you have less control over, which is this truly a special place, and can you get that across to the candidate?
Yeah, and just not to intimidate people that are not working for a company that's in this kind of a moment. One of the things I'm getting from this is that if you are transparent about the situation, that just gives the candidate some context as to what to expect. And maybe that's the thing that is very, very important. Okay, super interesting. Let's go to.
Hey, Han, can I make one quick comment? Because I totally agree. It's the feel of what you feel when you're there in that moment, right? Even more so when you're in person, probably, than when you're virtual. But you can still sense. I mean, are you focusing on me? I can remember when years ago at a software company, I was a hiring manager in product marketing, and I'm sitting at my desk and it's about 11:20 a.m. and the receptionist calls and says, your 11 o'clock interview has been waiting in the lobby for 20 minutes, right? And I'm like, oh my God, totally freaking out. And then and I'm really apologetic, and we get started, and the person was forgiving, but then that changed the rest of the day, right? Because every subsequent interview after that with my team and others were delayed. And it was already a frenetic and toxic environment anyway, which you can sense just sitting in there. So I remember later on, a couple of days later, saying, listen, we're really interested in you. And that person completely declined and said, no, I really don't have any interest in working there. But so it's a feel when you're there.
Yeah. How do you capture the feel? How do you? I'll volunteer my own example, but I'm actually a really bad example for this, simply because I've never had a job. Or the only job I've ever had was actually.
You're a bomb, Hung. Come on.
I don't know anything about candidate experience. Never been a candidate. No. But okay, let's talk about what the challenges are. Because we kind of know from a candidate perspective what we want to get, even if we can't always crystallize it. But what is stopping companies from, what's the biggest challenge, single biggest challenge? Because we know there's loads, but let's go around the table again and go for the one challenge you think is the big blocker for delivering good candidate experience. Yes, you wanna shoot for this one?
I can. So I've got, this is a real problem for me right now. So it's less of a theory, but capacity and conflicting priorities within the TA team. Then, like, how do they manage their 9 to 6 job, and how much time do they spend on interview candidates, sourcing candidates, jumping on projects, joining team meetings, joining one-to-ones, doing their reviews, replying to emails, etc., etc. And within that, the manual tasks, like we're doing a review right now, which is like a manual task review, and we're using automation and AI to kind of deal with each item. But that's like our biggest problem, because that has a subsequent effect on candidate experience. Because if you don't have the time to reply to someone on time, or if you don't have some form of automation to do that, someone's just sitting there and just waiting, and then someone else has gone and got them. So if you're not first, you'll be second. So for us, we're like, okay, well, how do we avoid that problem? So for us, capacity, I'd say, is like the underlining issue. How do you free up that time?
And that, and here's where capacity is a big challenge, is because you can't always predict. In fact, you can never predict the required capacity, because you're not always in control of applicant flow. For instance,
Right.
you may put a single job out, let's say you advertise it, literally nobody applies. Guess what? You don't have a candidate experience problem because you don't have any candidates. However, what if 1,000 people apply and you have expected to 100? Suddenly your workload has gone up by times 10, but you don't have the capacity in there. So how do we scale up the capacity in response to the unanticipated workload? Maybe this is something that AI can help with. Okay, great. Let's go with you, Kevin. Your thoughts on what is the single most sort of reason for companies failing to address CX properly?
I'm going to take some of the later stages. I was going to do a Jeopardy joke, but that's not going to work. The game Jeopardy, sorry. It was fun. And everybody's going, I don't know what you're talking about, Kevin, right now. So there you go. I'm going to take the later stages, because in every employer's defense, that whole example, what you shared, it's very difficult. If I have thousands of applications a month, I mean, even if I had the human team to respond to everybody, we wouldn't be able to do it. So that's where you definitely need technology to respond. But when you get into the later screening and interview stages in particular, where there's supposed to be more human interaction, even for high volume hiring, the conundrum then is the relationship also between the recruiters and the hiring managers too, and making sure that they're getting timely feedback on, I am presenting you with these quality candidates. This has been the long time complaint, right? The relationship between the recruiting and hiring managers, getting that timely feedback and knowing that we've got to get back to these candidates. And I'm telling you, in our data and research, every year, for those that actually got the offers and were accepted the offers, the candidates, less than 40% say that they talked to the hiring manager before they started on day one. Less than 40% tell us that every year. It just should be a lot higher. So that, combined with just even getting feedback that we want to provide to the candidates, even if, and I would highly recommend you always give feedback to finalists, no matter what. It's a super big differentiator in positive candidate experience. Every year we see it. That's the biggest thing to me, though, is getting that timely feedback, because it's not always going to be the recruiter's purview to make that final decision, right, at the end of the day. So that's my take.
No, so internal flow, information flow. There is a blockage somewhere. There's a contingency. Recruiters are sitting there thinking, give us something. Hiring managers ignoring the message. What do you do? I don't know. So maybe, again, AI could help in some way. Let's think about this, folks.
It's possible. Yeah, of course. Yeah, with communication.
How about you, Sal? What do you think is the biggest blocker to causing companies to kind of produce a suboptimal experience for candidates?
Yeah, I think it's very rarely like the intention. So I think the intention is almost always there to give candidates a great experience. Maybe apart from maybe some terrible companies or something, but in general, you know, everyone in recruitment knows that's a key part of what they bring to the table. And so really, just again, plus one, Yasser and Kevin, it's just that people have to spend so much time on other things, right? And so you have this classic sort of 2x2 of, is it important, is it urgent? You end up spending times on things that are really urgent, I need to be done today, even if they're really repetitive and rote tasks, and therefore not on the thing that might be that 5%, 10% improvement on candidate experience that sort of is, you know, but you don't know, right? It's a bit ambiguous. So I think that really it's just the fact that people spend so much time on other things. I heard this really amazing quote, or actually read this really amazing quote the other day, that was, people are scared that robots are going to take their jobs. Turns out we've been taking robots' jobs this whole time. So basically the idea that actually the thing that your team, your recruiting teams are spending time on are things that robots can do really well. And the things that they're not finding the time to spend time on are things that robots can't do. And so I think that's the big that's the really positive interpretation of the change that's going to occur, where actually that relationship, and by relationship I mean the quality of the interaction, but also, and included in that is like the speed of those interactions, how quickly you get back to someone, the amount of transparency you give, how often you check in to let them know where their applications are, all of those things, which of course parts of those communications can be automated, but the actual tone and sentiment and all those things are a little further down the line from being automated, and people can actually start to spend time on those things and not all the other stuff that is must do, but it's frustrating.
You know what? That's just exactly. There's such a wonderful quote. Wherever you read that, Sal, I'd love to. If it's a blog post, please share the link in the chat.
I think it was just a tweet, but I'll dig it out and share it with you.
Get the tweet out. Well, isn't it great? It's exactly right. Human beings are doing a lot of administrative work, shuffling bits of information between one system and another. Isn't that what all the half of recruitment operations is doing, right? If you're doing a recruitment job right now, how much time are you spending like moving bits of information from one system to another and then making sure all the systems are all, you know, accounted for and all the rest of it? That is something a robot should be doing. And of course, the things that robots can't do is to give that human touch.
Yeah.
By the way,
one other way to look at it, just sorry to sort of bleat on it, but I guess another way to even look at it is, even if you do see these sort of like deep fakes where robots can actually talk to people, it seems. But the point is, what do we want to happen? What I would want for my recruiting team is for my recruiters to develop great relationships with candidates through communication, whether it's sort of talking to them or emailing them or whatever, texting them, whatever it might be. And I don't really care so much if they're the ones that actually, you know, yeah, as you say, shuffle this piece of admin across to this pipeline and all that sort of stuff. Right? That's irrelevant to me.
Yeah, very, very good.
You know what? My wife and I used to be able to read road atlases when we traveled, right? We had maps, physical maps. We had to read them. We had to use them everywhere we went. And we were, you know, we could do that. I don't care about maps anymore. I don't need maps. I have, now I'm not on a survivalist show where I'm not going to have a cell signal out in the middle of the desert, but I'm depending on my GPS to tell me where I need to go. I offload that exercise, whatever you want to call it, to the phone, get me to where I need to go. Then I can focus on those things. I don't miss the maps. So
do you know what? And this is no like criticism to people who still use paper maps, but whenever I'm walking out in town, I do see someone who's wrestling with like a big A to Z thing. I kind of admire it in some way. It's like I notice it and I think, wow, it's like I should make a note of this. Like there's still people that are looking at paper in order to navigate around London, and it's like it's still there. You know, some people are still there. You go, time travelers. Maybe so. This is why I got full respect for them. You know what I mean? They may know something we don't. Okay. Let's get into how AI can help us with these persistent issues. We talked about capacity is an issue. We've talked about information bottlenecks being an issue. We've talked about maybe the entire design of a recruiter's job being a problem, like with the time distribution of what recruiters are spending time on, that needs to be reconfigured. So Where does AI fit in with all of this? How can it be deployed? Where is the most obvious place? Let's deal with capacity first. And yes, everyone can answer this, by the way, but go to Yasar first, seeing as you mentioned this is the first thing. Where do you see AI alleviating the capacity problem?
Okay, so there isn't much to follow online. Like, there are not many companies really driving AI in the best way. Like you said, it's growing and it's changing so frequently. So for us, we were always fast followers, right? As opposed to enthusiasts of AI. And so now what we've done is we've kind of looked back at, okay, the 80-20 theory, kind of looking back at our candidate experience and saying, okay, where could we have maybe automated this? Where is the task quite repetitive, or where is something so bland that maybe it can be automated? So when you look at the entire recruitment process, what we typically see is, let's say, the beginning, the application stage, the initial kind of interaction with the recruiter for our organization, where we get 200, 300, 400,000 applications every quarter. It's quite important that that's automated and it's not someone sitting there for 5 days and then responds, right? So the typical response that most candidates would get is, oh, if you don't hear a response from us, that means we're not interested. You know, that people mock that nowadays, but there needs to be a different leveling. So what we've done in HelloFresh and what we're looking at right now is a leveling response. So, okay, we like the look of your profile based on using, I won't mention the technologies, but different technologies we can use. We can figure out, okay, this profile looks more relevant. So they get a customized response. This profile looks at the 5 to 6 ranking. They get a customized response. This profile doesn't look so great. So what we're going to do is we're going to recommend that they go to our talent community. And that already alleviates so much pain of the recruiter, who doesn't need to now log in to their ATS and see, okay, I've got 1,000 applications. They've got the top 20 stack rank to some degree, but that doesn't stop the sourcing problem then, because you know, hiring managers always say, well, you should be actively sourcing. Recruiters always want to actively source, try and get straight to it as well. So there is that part that we're trying to now figure out, which is, okay, how can we create more of a talent marketing approach, get people to come to us, build a bigger brand in terms of automating that. And then during the interview process, obviously, you've got tools like Metaview, which can help in terms of like capturing notes. But then there's also like the comparison piece, which is missing. Like, okay, how can, in real time, can we capture this candidate that we're interviewing compared to the last 10? So when we do the debrief, we have all this information. Right now, it's very manual. Recruiter will go back into the log, check all the history, see, okay, these candidates have come in. This is what they compared to. So there's a lot of like hours worth of meetings that should be looked at right now. And that's what we're trying to do, figure out, okay, it takes 135 hours roughly to hire someone just based on application. It takes 75 hours based on sourcing. 75 hours is a lot of time. Why is it taking 75 hours? And you might think, that's how is it 75? But it's actually like everybody's time, not just the recruiter's time, everybody's time in every part of the process. And so when you look at it like that, and you've got to hire, and we hired 10,000 people, when you add the man hours or the people hours up, it's insane. So even if you could reduce 1 hour, it's a lot.
And yes, so just to be clear on that, you mean you're including, when you have a rec, you might have, you're going to interview lots of candidates. So you're including all of the hours spent on all of those candidates, not just the one that you hire.
Yasar, why don't you share your LinkedIn into the chat there, because I'm sure people are going to want to know what that product is. If you don't want to say, I totally get it, you don't want to say publicly, but I think people might want to reach out and find out, okay, what is the thing that is able to do some sort of analysis of the and by the way, you can feel free not to tell them personally if you want, but I suspect that people might want to have that dialogue with you. So I think that's amazing, because if you have like a high volume response rate, you can't have a human being possibly scanning those candidates, because let me tell you this, a human being will make arbitrary decisions to reduce a high volume to a manageable number. If you remember the last time you posted a job out and you actually were overwhelmed by response, you end up just like picking random things and saying, this person needs to have a degree, or anybody who's not within 10 miles radius of this job location, they're out automatically. Or you'd make some other arbitrary stuff out there yeah, absolutely, Ed. This is the ATS screening bot that people say doesn't exist, but may exist now. But anyway, it's going to be a useful tool to transform a large number to a small number, but also then deliver the sort of a response that is not a zero response, not a CV black hole, which I still think is the predominant experience for high application jobs, is like literally no response. And it's not the second worst thing, which is if you don't hear from us, treat it as a rejection, but you actually get something irrespective of your status in the flow. Like, for instance, even if you're kind of not optimal for the job, you get a diversion into the talent community. You can join that and then be partaking in rich content material, stuff like that. So that's very, very sophisticated. Same question to you, though, Kev. In terms of alleviating that capacity issue, I think Yasar's got a very advanced sort of way to deal with that top of funnel sort of approach. How common is that from what you've seen? Can you give us some sort of high level view as to what is it exceptional, or are there many companies starting to adopt this mechanism?
There's not many. There's more companies that are that are scaling with that kind of, again, smart technology that we have today, AI technology. I can tell you that for most, all candidates, we all want to talk to a human. I apply for a job. The reality is that even for, since the World Wide Interwebs came online and we had ATSs that for the past few decades, and everything that's advanced to today, you're just not going to talk to a human, period. But what we find in our research and data, that what we're calling conversational AI, a little bit more than binary yes and no, like question and answer things, either whether it's on the career site or while I'm applying, if I can get questions answered, or during the process, the conversational AI tech really is helping drive communication. It's not trying to fool anybody, and job candidates, know they're not talking to a human, but they're getting engagement, they're getting communication where there was none before, potentially. And I can tell you, even just a few years ago, I've talked to companies that will tell me, we only respond to those that we're interested in following up on. And I'm like, everybody should get closure. Everybody, even at the point of I'm completely unqualified at the point of application, within 3 to 5 days, you should wrap that up with them. Let them know, thank you very much for your time. We're not going to pursue you. Automation can help do that. And Yasar already covered that with what they're doing on top of funnel too. But the communication and the engagement is what candidates want. And it does elevate their positive and fair sentiment in the process, as opposed to nothing at all.
Yeah. And by the way, I think even pre-AI chatbots, I think we're very good on things like FAQs and what have you. Like, you could
just question and answer basic. Yeah.
It's better than nothing, because, as you say, the comparator isn't a human being that's going to talk to you, because you can't have 1,000 recruiters talk to 1,000 candidates. But you want, there's certain basic yes/no questions that the candidate might ask, that you have there's no ambiguity in there. Yes, you need a visa to work here. No, there's no relocation package. Yes, right. It's a shift job. This is the distribution. Yes, you need to have a license to do this. All of those questions that are FAQ, that I think we'll call it now a traditional chatbot, but a pre-AI chatbot could do. So right. I'd be interested to know, Kev, whether you have this data from your work with the talent board. Like, do you know what the percentage of companies that actually have deployed a chatbot on their career page as of today, last 12 months, so to speak?
I can have to look it up while we're talking right now. I can get it in a few minutes and then bring it back and post it for everybody. But it is, I'm guessing it's within 30 to 40% range, which we've seen increasing over the past few years. It's still not, it's, again, more companies are investing in and experimenting with AI technology in their recruiting tech stack. So, and I'll get that exact number for you, at least with our data. But it has been growing over the past few years, though, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's won the argument in terms of its function. So I'd be surprised if companies aren't doing it, and also I'd be surprised if ATSs don't actually natively have something that they can help companies deploy onto their pages or not. But
right.
But we'll see on that. Your thoughts on this, Sal? Obviously, the interview notes is one of the most obvious implementations, right? Which of course, this is the product that you've isolated.
So I think from my perspective, focusing really on the interview part of the process, which is where I personally sort of am most passionate. We sort of see it in three. There are three steps, and you sort of taking the steps at the same time, but there's a little bit of a sequence to them, which is the first thing we really think how AI is going to impact candidate experience is move the task away from recruiters so they can focus on relationships. So I think increasingly that's going to be the recruiter's job, is maintaining that relationship, that candidate experience with the candidates. And so you're going to remove the other things. So in our case, taking notes during an interview, writing up your notes afterwards and uploading them to a system, chasing up the hiring manager, say, can you give me some notes, please? And they tell you a one-line summary and you're like, oh, damn, I'm no more calibrated. You're going to remove all of that stuff and you're going to focus on relationships. The second thing, and I think we're actually, as an industry and also definitely as a product, further along on this second step than maybe you might think, Yasar, just based on your comparison comment, is detection. So how can we use technology to detect bad experiences? So we talked previously about, well, what's the biggest obstacle to great candidate experiences? One of the things we didn't mention, which was sort of my second on the list, was, well, you don't know what's happening in most of your interactions. So how are you ever going to know what's going wrong with your candidate experience when you have no idea what's happening in your interviews, which again, for my money, are the most important interactions that candidates actually have during a hiring process. So that ability to have an assistant that never gets tired and can sit in on every interview and detect anomalies and bad pitches of the company, candidates that get talked over a lot or that get very little time to talk, and all of those things that we know sort of might be a clue that a bad experience happened. That's part of what AI can bring to the table too, because of course, as you said, Hung, you're never going to have 1,000 recruiters for 1,000 candidates sitting in on every interview that they have downstream. It's not possible. You need to rely on technology to do that. So that detection is the second piece. And then I think the third, and the one that requires the most the softest hands and the most thought, is around like nudging and coaching. So what can you actually do to other than just playing data back to people, what can you do to help people understand what they should do to change their behavior in a way that is still like authentic to them, right? You're not trying to say, which I think is why it's like such a challenging piece. But yeah, those are the steps for us. First of all, use AI to help people focus on people, then use it to detect things, or alongside that, use it to detect things that otherwise you'd be completely oblivious of. And then lastly, use it to sort of actually action the change where it can.
Yeah, that's a really, really good breakdown, I've got to say. Because it just, when you were speaking, Sal, it kind of crystallized in my mind. Like, if time is a problem, recruiters are obviously busy, everyone's busy, right? But if you can just like create extra 5 minutes per thing the recruiter has to do, then suddenly that frees up time, and the recruiter then has the choice. Yes, you can then speak to the candidate. Or you can then write a better email because the candidate deserves that, or you could at least leave a VM or do something that otherwise you'd be struggling to do because you're overwhelmed. So technology can help basically increase efficiency of the recruiter.
Yeah.
That productivity, efficiency gain needs to then be redeployed. Don't go and do more automatable stuff. That needs to be redeployed in a smart way and do the human stuff.
And to sort of chime on what Yasser has mentioned earlier, where if you're not first, you're second. This is in a lot of cases it's a real competition for talent, right? The market's shifted a little bit recently, just with the, especially in tech, being more talent available, but still to get the best of the best, you're competing. And it's sort of a classic case where if you're not sort of giving that stellar human high touch experience, you're going to lose. So it's sort of like the horse is already bolted on that in that case, I think.
Yeah, I think there's also a case where candidate expectations have just elevated to another level, particularly highly skilled in-demand candidates. The era.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone's expectations have just increased. Sal, I just want to re-summarize some of the points you made because I think they were really powerful. The second thing was detecting what was going on, because again, the interview was previously a black hole. Even a Zoom call, it was a black hole. Like you're not going to watch every video. No. Recruiters aren't going to watch every single video back. It's impossible. However, if you had something that was able to transcribe and analyze the conversation, That's going to give you a lot of information that previously didn't exist. And of course, that's a very, very powerful interaction point for candidates. It would be surprising if that wasn't one of the determining factors of all of the of events. Like, how was the experience when you're speaking to people in the interview?
Actually, one of the really cool things about that detection as well, Hung, and this goes for Metaview, but other sort of parts of the hiring flow, of course, could benefit from detection too, detection of issues. You can almost think of it, if you're involved in launching a technology product, often you have like anomaly detection. Where are the anomalies happening in where we're deploying our products? One of the really great things about it is it actually can also elevate a recruiting team to being much more of an advisor, to much more of an advisory role, right? If you are actually able to detect these things, and even if the technology can't do the nudging of the HM to say, hey, you're doing this thing wrong. If now actually, because out of the 100 interviews a hiring manager has done in the last, year or so, you know the sort of the handful of issues that seem to be recurring, and you can have that really credible conversation with them because you actually know what's happening in these interviews, then that can also elevate you as a recruiter. So I think it's not just, this is where you get into like the augmentation of the recruiter beyond just their own conversations with candidates, and actually enabling them to be an advisor, like this augmented advisor for the whole process, because they have much more information than they had before.
Yeah, and that obviously increases credibility. One of the hidden problems of candidate experience is actually sometimes the recruiter kind of lacks internal credibility, and therefore is not able to really kind of inform the candidate of the situation. That's really damaging for experience. So if we can elevate the recruiter internally, that should actually improve the experience the candidate gets. By the way, Jacob just asked a really interesting question. I wonder whether it's possible for us to do a quick poll on this. Stephanie, I wonder whether you got the chance to whip up a quick poll in terms of whether, has technology improved CX over time? I mean, do we throw all the technology out? Has there been improvement? Let's have a look. I'd be interested to know what people say about that. By the way, folks, we've got 20 minutes left, so if you have any questions that you definitely want answered, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We're going to get to them at the end of the show here.
Hey, Hung, Hey, real quick, I just found that one of the answers, what I was looking for earlier when you were asking me. In 2020, about 40% of the employers in our benchmark research, and keep in mind, there are also employers that are kind of leaning in, wanting to learn and make more improvements too in our research every year. So there is a little bit of a skew there, but 40% said they use chatbot recruiting technology. And last year in 2022, 50% said they use recruiting chatbot technology. And we've seen that incrementally increasing. I mean, I throw my vote in. I mean, it can actually, I mean, if anything, at the end of the day, and we can see what everybody thinks here, I think it does improve. I mean, again, humans can't scale with the volume of some of mid-sized or larger enterprises, the volume of people that are applying for jobs, and technology can help improve consistent and timely communication and engagement. And that the perception of a candidate, even though they're not talking to a human, does get elevated. We see it every year in our research. But again, everybody don't forget, what is the one thing that all candidates want? To get hired. That's the happy customer in the equation at the end of the day.
So I think that's a really important point, because whatever happens, rejection is really, really tough. Even a rhino-skinned individual is not going to take it as optimally as it's not fun. It's basically someone judging you and saying, actually, we don't think you're right. That's tough to take. So we're dealing with the psychology of a person that had high hopes. The hopes are disappointed. How are we as a business going to make that better? Yasser, I think you mentioned one technique already was to give them something. Give them like not just a flat nose, like a stone wall, but give them another door they can go into, join a talent community, for instance, some other pathway where they can continue their journey rather than stop. And we talked already about transparency. We talked about, making sure the information flows there and elevating the recruiter with, the human side and stuff. So yeah, folks, go vote on the poll. I don't know where you find that, but go and check it out. I noticed that hosts and panelists have been banned from voting, which I think is an outrageous, being disenfranchised here. Okay. Let's talk about yes, I think you want to say something. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, it was just like there was so many points there. So on the candidate experience from a technology perspective, is it improving candidate experience? I think technology is improving the amount of time we have, and what we spend our time on is probably the most important question. Is it prioritizing CX and thus improving CX? And then with regards to like the most important thing is to get the candidate hired. I agree with Kevin. There is a slight different view we have in HelloFresh, particularly where candidate experience is everybody. It's the people that get hired because we do MPS surveys. It's the candidates who get hired, third interview rejection, second interview, first interview, test rejections, people who apply. So, and then you have like an overall score. So for us, we're trying to, we absolutely, that's like our number one priority, making sure that the people we offer actually take the offer and have a great experience and join. But there is this element of like, it's kind of like the whispers afterwards, the reviews, the conversations. Oh, you had an interview with HelloFresh. How did it go? Oh, they were terrible, or they were great. Yeah, but I didn't join them. But I joined their community. So it's like that kind of community element, especially when you're hiring in tech. You can easily become blacklisted by the candidates. And we've seen this in time and time again, where companies are being blacklisted by candidates. They're saying, oh, you don't want to work for them. They're terrible. And it's not just their practices at work, but also their processes at the beginning kind of indicate what it's like later on. Perception is a reality. And if the beginning stages say anything, they kind of speak volumes of how your organization is run.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with that. And absolutely. Oh wow, here's the results of the poll. I think that's really so. Okay, 81% have said that technology does actually help. And in fact, AI, particularly that's the question, is going to help. And I think it will, but there's also some dangers here. AI will help, I think, in terms of the capacity issue, the efficiency issue, all of that stuff is true. But what about things like bias? Like one of the questions I think people would ask, yes, when you've got the early screening tool, etc., people might say, hey, listen, it's all well and good talking about candidate experience, but what if I get like arbitrarily siphoned off into the don't call pile when I don't feel I've been given like due consideration? So that surely is bad experience, isn't it? Where is the danger of AI contributing to bad candidate experience? Yasser, answer that one, please.
The alternative is you get ignored. Right, so that's the reality of the situation. Like, you either getting ignored because I've got too many applications, so I'm only going to focus on the ones I sourced, or the first 100 that I've had a chance to review and I picked 3 that I like, and I'm going to move them into the second stage, first stage, or whatever the interview process, because that's how it actually happens. Most recruiters have a limited amount of time that they want to spend on reviewing CVs, and so if they can't review the full 1,000, they'll review the top 10, and they'll review the top 10 based on what? Job title and company. Most of the time, they'll just quickly skim through the list. Oh, that person works at Google. Okay, let me look at their profiles first. And that's the real problem that we're facing now, is that the biases are actually, I personally believe there's less bias when you do it this way. I think recruiters are more biased than we think. I think human beings are biased in our nature. And you see that so prominently when it comes to LinkedIn. And I'm no offense to anybody who does this. I don't personally do this, but you see this when someone posts X LinkedIn or X Facebook or X Meta or X Google on their LinkedIn headline. They're basically shouting out to the world, hey, I worked for this company, so there's my standard. And so that's because recruiters look at that. And even candidates know recruiters look at that. We all know recruiters look at that. So does it improve by is it worse? No, I think it's better.
Yep, I think very powerful response, Yasser, and I actually agree with that. I think the comparator is the human managed experience, which we cannot presume is bias free. So the criticism that we often subject AI to or any type of technology is to say, oh, it's not perfect. But yes, it's not perfect. But the comparison isn't to perfect. the comparison is to a very flawed human managed process, which could be even more biased. Okay, Kevin, let's go to you with a similar question. Where do you think the risks are of using AI in candidate experience where it can actually be negative? We talked about, hey, there's lots of potentially good, ways in which you can help us improve. But can you sort of in your darkest imagination imagine sort of something where AI would actually be bad for CX?
I'm a child of the Terminator series, so I think of Skynet. I think of the end of days. I think the reality is that I think modern neuroscience has shown us again and again that unfortunately humans, we already touched on this a little bit, we're not great decision makers. Human beings, we are rife with bias. That does not mean that the technology is not without bias. It just means that if you have the right algorithms, the right data sets that the humans are helping it learn over time, when you want to depend, the concern is when you're depending solely on the technology to make those hiring decisions at the end of the day. And it's still, there still needs to be vetting involved. I mean, that's the, Commissioner Keith Sonderling in the US of the OFCCP, EEOC, I mean, sorry. That's, he's not anti-AI, but he wants to ensure that, employers that are having fair and balanced recruiting and hiring practices at the end of the day. So I think it's still early days. I think we're a little bit all overwhelmed and excited about what's happening right now, this latest explosion. But I think we do need to be careful, and there needs to be some guidelines and some ethical guidelines put into place of how we are using these technologies in recruiting, hiring, sourcing, retention across the people. And the related thing that I wanted to say to this is that whether it's between humans and or the tech, the proof of whether or not rejected candidates are feeling like they have a positive candidate experience is in their willingness to apply again, to refer others, to have brand affinity, and to buy stuff if you're a consumer-based business. If you have that data that shows that there's a growing percentage of your rejected candidates that feel that way, you are doing the right things, I would argue.
Yeah, very, very good. Okay, folks, let's move to the questions because we're running out of time. If you have any questions you want to ask, please go ahead and continue to use the Q&A. The next 5-10 minutes are going to be on this. Okay, we have, we just go in order. We have Rowan. Rowan said, okay, is Metaview available in another language, e.g. German? Sile, go.
Not right now, no, soon.
Okay, do you know what the next language is going to be? Is there an order?
It won't sort of come like that, or sort of like slowly, then all at once.
Yep, got it. Okay, cool. So watch this space, Rowan. Okay, Susan has said, what is your suggestion to partner better with interviewers and hiring managers to ensure holistic, excellent candidate experience? So I think this is coming from the point of view of a recruiter. How can they work with the hiring manager or indeed a peer-to-peer interviewer to ensure better candidate experience? How your thoughts on this, Yas? You want to give this a shot?
Yeah, sure. So typically what we would do is map out the current engagement rate during the interview process. So if you think of the peaks and troughs during an interview process of engagement, when someone's super excited and super low, so during the first interview and second interview, if it typically takes 2 weeks to book an interview or 1 week to book an interview, during that period, if we see a lot of drop-offs or candidates taking a little longer, what can we do differently? And we kind of map that out using the data and then kind of show, okay, if we add these extra processes, maybe an email from the hiring manager to the candidate to say, hey, we're thinking of you. We want you to book a second interview, which is having some scheduling issues or whatever it may be. Like simple things like that during the interview process make a massive difference. It's the kind of silent periods that cause the biggest issues. And so during that peak moment where you're really excited, the silence drops you down, then back up again when you're in your second interview, and then down, then back up again. And it's like, how do you address that kind of constant up and down? Because it's exhausting for the candidate to get really excited and then after an interview and then afterwards hear nothing. And then a week later, oh, can you interview on Friday? Okay, sure. And then in that moment there, if you can really display that in a process map, that's a really powerful statement to make to a hiring manager or hiring teams to say, look, this is where you come in. And it shows, it does more than just show them, what the process is like. It kind of builds a partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great answer. Yes. Let's move on quickly. We've got John Joseph Amani. Thanks you for putting your full name in, by the way, Jean Joseph. Can AI help recycle candidates and work better on the qualified pool? This will impact better the CX, as applicants are going to be more qualified. So in other words, this kind of goes to what Kevin's point was initially, is that if we can funnel better candidates to job fit, then you got a better chance of getting better experience because more of them are going to get the jobs, right? So can AI help do that? Any thoughts on this? I'll throw it openly to the panel here.
I think for sure, over time, I think that's inevitably going to be like, that's what we're all in the game of, right? It's sort of matchmaking. Right. We don't love having lots of candidates that we're going to end up rejecting. It's just right now we want to see a broad spectrum of people. So we're confident we found the right one. Over time, I think that matchmaking is going to get more and more efficient. Technology is going to play a big role in that, and AI is going to play a role in that. But I think it's like it's not like clear. The path is not completely clear. So I would say like macro answer, yes, for sure it will. What does that mean? Like people should do tomorrow to sort of leverage that? I don't think there's like a great answer for that right now. But obviously, maybe Kevin or yes, I think different.
No, we don't have the time to go around the table. So yes, okay. So thank you so much for that. We have another question as well that actually we accidentally moved to the wrong tab, but this is an interesting one that all of us can kind of give a shot to, which is, what's your personal one pick of a repetitive task that you'd like to automate first? So you got a long list of stuff you want to get rid of. You want to automate or produce some sort of solution which gets rid of it for your recruiting team. What is that one task? Let's go to you, Kevin, on that first.
Responding to every single applicant when they apply, and with a quality, personable response that is automated. That is not, I mean, that and it happens in a timely fashion. And then I would also argue in the same breath, those that are unqualified at that point, within a week, get that final response as well.
Yeah, very good. Same question to you, Yasser. What's the one thing that you think, okay, we need to drop in a solution here with that?
It's kind of a plus one, but maybe to pick something different, I'd say something as simple as, although it's kind of being addressed, interview scheduling. Yeah. I know it's already been addressed by a lot of tools, but it's not like super AI, like candidate comes in and then just ends up in my calendar. It's not like that. There's obviously a lot of processes in between using tools and stuff. So I think that would save a lot of time and actually kind of elevate the role of a recruitment coordinator a bit by removing the coordination part and maybe letting them focus on something different.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a very large company only a week or so. I didn't speak to the company. I spoke to a person that worked in the TA team, and she mentioned that her business had 200 interview coordinators working in the company. And they didn't use even the consumer stuff. They didn't use Calendly. It was literally chasing on emails, trying to patch in people with calendar and stuff like this. And this reminded me of the old, telephonist type people who are literally plugging things in, and that's what they're doing. It's like insane. So we've got a long way to go. 200, not 2,000. That would be 2,000. Just be an awesome image. I wouldn't want to deal with that. Okay, Sal, you're obviously biased on this, but let's say a little bit more about sort of that interview note side. How do you see that evolving? For recruiters.
And maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm not. I think actually Yasser and Kevin's answers are like correct. I also think they are solved problems. It's like basically if you're still doing that completely manually, then you're obviously really averse to change, because there's no reason for that to still be manual, like scheduling and replying to every every candidate. So I think the next where the puck is going, I guess, is more what we really think, taking interview notes. Especially if you're a hiring manager and it was a clear no for a candidate, going through the sort of the rigmarole when I've got a million different priorities of writing up extensive notes and summary of why this candidate was not a good fit for my recruiter to understand. Often I don't spend time doing that, frankly. I deprioritize it, which is a good sort of evidence that maybe it needs to be automated, because it is important to someone else. The externality is really important. your recruiter's not learning what to look for. But to me right now in this moment, I want to get on with shipping my X or Y new feature. So yeah, that's what I think where the real big lift is for helping people focus more on relationships, as well as frankly improve the calibration that sits in the funnel, which of course has a great impact on candidate experience for obvious reasons. But the non-obvious reason is you don't get candidates getting to the bottom of going all the way through the interview process only to get a no. So you have more of the people who get further in the process likely to actually get a yes at the end of it.
Yeah, very, very good. Folks, we're coming right to the end of the show. We're going to ask a few final questions to the panelists. But before we do that, if you've enjoyed this type of conversation and you enjoyed this concept of where AI fits in with our recruitment flow, make sure you sign up to the next episode, at the final episode, where we're going to be talking AI and data visibility. Stephanie, if you can share the link into the chat there, that would be useful. And of course, we're going to email you with the registration link there as well. You can also follow this show on the Metaview company page, I believe, which is where all of this is going live. So if you follow the page, you get updated there as well. Let's finish off with the final question. This is directed to the human recruiters who are watching the show. What should they be doing to prepare for this AI-enabled future in order for them to, elevate candidate experience? So this is what human recruiters need to do to equip themselves to thrive in the AI-enabled future. You want to give this one first, Yas?
Yeah, sure. I think this is an easy one. Everybody can do this today, tomorrow. Do a manual task audit. Go through all the process flow and just look at all your manual tasks where you don't have technology changing it, and then just put a asterisk next to it to be confirmed for the future. And then figure it out.
Very interesting. You just reminded me I should be doing that exercise also. Okay, Kevin, your thoughts?
Apply for your own jobs to understand what that experience is like and make improvements. Apply for your competitor jobs to understand what that experience is like and improve it, and audit all your candidate communications especially if you've never done it before. It's been years. So
there we go. Excellent stuff. Kevin, please share the links to your stuff onto the chat there as well, because I think people who care about candidate experience should be following Kevin Grossman. Okay, Sal, your final word on this. What should recruiters be doing in this future that we've got in front of us that's actually right here, right now?
Yeah, slightly more general, but basically tell yourself that your job is to create the best possible relationship with candidates. That's going to be the last thing that's going to fall into those manual task bucket. So if Yas is talking about this manual task bucket, that you need to sort of get rid of those manual tasks you're doing, the last thing that's going to fall into that bucket, therefore the thing you're going to keep on wanting to own, is the quality of the relationship with your candidate. And just think about what are the things that are getting in the way of that, and work out how to get rid of them, and also get excellent at creating those relationships, because again, that's not something that AI in its current form is anywhere near taking off your plate.
Yeah, very good. I'll add that final point as well. The work of recruitment will be changing. There's no question that AI is going to change the sort of work that we do, therefore the skills we need. What I would say recruiters should be doing is that we should be doing two things. Number one, Saad is correct. Double down on the things that robots can't do. So develop your EQ, develop your interview skills, develop your relationship building skills, all of that stuff. The second thing I think you should be doing is to make sure that you are the implementer of the technology that's going to change the job. Don't allow someone else to come in to do that. You don't want some implementation consultant coming in. You don't want a project manager coming in. Recruiters, TA people need to take possession of how do we actually AI enable the function and not have an external party do that to you. That's not where we want to be. Okay, folks, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure you follow everybody online and follow the company page at Metaview. I will see you, I think, in 2 weeks' time for AI and data visibility. Thanks for all your time, folks.
Thanks so much, all. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.